Hi friends, it's Becky, and I have been wanting to get into the Woodland Fairy Sam's Bead box. Finally getting a chance to dig into it and get started, and the first thing I wanted to do was make a necklace using this gorgeous, gorgeous amethyst geode chunk. It is an absolute chunker of a pendant. It is on the heavy side, so I wanted to do a beaded chain, but I wanted to make sure that the links I did had some strength, that they weren't going to break apart when there's some pressure added to them. So they're wrapped loops, and I am using the largest gauge wire that will fit through the holes of these beads. So for these amethyst beads that are the fancy cut ones, I'm using 18 gauge wire because the 18 gauge wire will fit through that. And for the apatite beads, I'm using some 20 gauge wire. And so that's two different gauges of wire, but it's still going to work out really well for me, especially since I'm taking the opportunity with the different gauges of wire to make some loops that are different sizes for this. I wanted to use these big and little size loop links because it gives it more of an airy feeling, you know, to kind of balance out this chonker of a pendant. So that's what I've been doing, and I'll show you how to make these links where we've got one large hoop and one small hoop and link them all together. I'm going to demonstrate both of these, and then we're going to connect this to my pendant, and I've already started two sides of the chain, so we'll just finish up this chain here, show you how to connect those together and how to put this together, and then I'm going to use the 18 gauge wire to make a little hook for a closure, and then finally we'll grab our little man in the moon beads and make some earrings to go with it. The tools that I'm going to be using are some flush cutters, chain nose pliers, and I'm using my 6-step bail making pliers to do my loops so that I can have consistent loops. For my small loops, they are all this first size loop. It's just right here on the end. And then for my other ones, for the amethyst links, I'm using the largest size loop, and for my apatite links, I'm using the second largest loop. And I'll show you how I use that when we get to that part of it. I do sometimes grab a second set of pliers when I'm doing the wire wrapping, especially with the 18 gauge wire. It just helps wrap it better and easier. It's easier on my fingers when I do that. Okay, so I think that is a good rundown of what I'm using and where I got it. Let's start with this, and then we'll make our links. So I've got, actually no, because I'm going to be making this with one of my links. So maybe making the links first. Yeah, we'll make the links first, and then I'll show you how I'm going to put that together. All right, so like I said, I'm using different gauges of wire for each stone because I wanted the largest gauge of wire that would fit through the gemstones. And when you are checking to see what gauge wire will fit through your gemstones, you never want it to be a gauge that you have to like force it on there. This moves very easily. Even if there's a little bit of a bend on it, it will still go just fine on this 18 gauge wire. But I've got this on here, and I'm going to show you how I make my loops. I'm going to start with the largest loop. So about 3.5 to 4 inches from the end, I'm going to make a little bend, kind of a right angle bend away from me. And I'm going to take my bail making pliers, and I'm going to put that largest loop right here on the top of that. And then I push the wire around, and you can adjust this if you need to. Bring it all the way around to the other side, like that. And then once it's like this, I like to take my pliers and kind of smush that loop with it in order to help work harden it. 18 gauge wire doesn't need it as much, but it's still useful to do it that way. And then I'll just grab onto the loop and use my finger or that second set of pliers to wrap around the neck of this wire with the end, and about 3 wraps will do. You don't really need more than that. And then you can cut off your excess. Tuck that tail if it's sticking out. Then I've got my bead on here. I like to measure about 3 fingers down from the end when I cut this off. And I want to make sure that I'm looking at the circle on this loop and not at a line. When I hold my wire with my pliers and bend that wire over the top of it, that'll give me some room to wrap above this bead when I make my second loop. My second loop, these loops will be perpendicular, so they won't be parallel to each other, they'll cross ways. So my second loop, that's the smaller loop, and I'm going to use this smallest part of my bail making pliers. I'm going to put that right on the top of that bend, push this up and around, open my pliers and rotate them. And I'll get to kind of scooch it around the amethyst, which reminds me of a 20-sided die. Anyway, then I've got an open loop, and when I made each of these links, I left that second loop open. I did not wrap it until I went to put these together. So let's make our second one with our 20 gauge wire, and it's the Apatite bead. And it's going to be exactly the same way. I'm just using a different loop for my first loop, a different section of my 6-step bail making pliers for my first one than I did the other one. So we're going to go ahead and put that Apatite on there. And again, this moves easily. It does not fit on the 18 gauge wire. You don't want to be using wire that you have to force any of these beads onto, because when you have to force them on there, they have a tendency to sometimes break, depending on the bead. So now I'm using the second largest loop. I'm putting that one on top of my bend instead of this big one. I've got the second one up there. And this is for the Apatite links. Bring that over and around until it crosses over. Like that. And I've got my little balloon. And this one definitely needs the squishing. I just give it a squish with my pliers before I start wrapping. And I only wrap the curved part. And then I can do the same thing that I did with the other, use my fingers or a second set of pliers to wrap that around. Clip off my excess. Push my bead up. 3 fingers down, we'll cut it, make sure I can see a circle, and then bend over the top of my pliers, and then I'm going to make a loop with my smallest loop on my 6-step loopers, and I'm not going to wrap it until I'm ready to make my chain. So then when I made my chain, I started here with one of these, and I hooked it onto one of the amethyst ones, and then wrapped it, and then did the same thing. I hooked that amethyst one that I had just hooked onto it, onto the next Apatite link, and then wrapped it, and then I hooked the Apatite link onto the amethyst one, and looped it. So I've got this amethyst link just sitting out there unattached. Just the singlest single you've ever seen. Actually, he's attached to this one. I'm just going to swing that open with my pliers. I just gave it a little bit of a twist to make it easier for me to slide this Apatite link onto it, because it's Amethyst Apatite, Amethyst Apatite. It's all the A's for this one. I'm going to hold on to that little loop there. And this is the part that I usually employ the second set of pliers for, because it can be a little bit awkward sometimes with this piece of the wire and getting that around. So I'm just going to use these pliers gently, gently, moving that around while I hold on to that loop, especially with the 18 gauge wire. There we go. And then once that's wrapped, I'm getting real close with the end of this, snip that off and tuck the end. And that's how I connect that link to this one and then to this one, so it's connected there. Now this one I'm going to need to connect to my amethyst link, so I'm going to do the same thing with my unwrapped loop. Swing that open a little bit, just give it some more space there, so I can put this amethyst link on. Swing that closed again. Put my pliers there in the way. I'm going to start wrapping this end around. It can be really awkward sometimes. That's okay, I thrive with awkward. All right, and now I have 2 lengths of chain. This will be one for each side. That should be the same length, and both of them end with an unwrapped amethyst link. And I'm going to end up wrapping this onto this apatite link after I get this apatite link attached here to my amethyst focal. So the focal has a bail on it already, but that is easy enough to remove. Just gonna open up. It's a pinch bail, so just unpinch it and pull that off of there. And now I've got a loop right here up at the top, and I'm going to loop this apatite link right onto it. There we go. It's a little bit heavy, so I'm going to just embrace the awkward. Get this wrapped around. It's basically the same wrapping that you just saw me do to get those other links linked together. I don't want that sticking out in the front, so I'm just going to tuck this around a little bit more till that's in the back of the Here we go. So now that I've got that linked together, I can take one of these amethyst loops. Just going to swing this open and attach it to this link here. Close that. Wire wrapping all the way around. Loving that. And I'm going to attach the second one right here to the same apatite link. Swing open that amethyst link. Get this hooked on. And let's do some wrapping. Close that. Come on. Oh, everybody's getting in the way. It's like they all want to be part of it. All right, I'm going to say that's good. Beautiful. All right, and now I'm just going to do a little bit of a loop with this 18 gauge wire. Because I've already got a loop on here, I'm just going to make a little hook that I can attach to this end, and that hook will catch onto this loop. And again, I'm going to use the 18 gauge wire for this. And my brown nose pliers, but I'm also going to use the 6-step bill making pliers as well. I just want to do a tight little loop right here at the very end of this wire so that it's round and there's no like rough scratchy surfaces on here anywhere. And then I'm going to grab the bill making pliers, and I think I'm going to use this 3rd step down. Yeah. I'm just going to pull this around. There we go. Like that. So there's a little hook. And let's snip that off there. And I want to use this loop right here for the part of it that connects here. I'm going to do a simple loop with it. So I'm going to bend this back and then push this around. Thanks, come here, buddy. And then right there, about where it meets, I'm going to cut that end flush. Close this up. And that's going to be my little loop. All right, now I can hammer this to make it more work hardening. And in fact, I think that's what I'm going to do. So stop hammer time. got a little nylon plier or hammer and my bench block right here. So I'm just going to go over here and do that real quick. So I will be back when that's done, and I'm going to turn this off because it's very loud while I'm doing it, and you don't need that. All right, I am back and this has been hammered. So I'm going to just use this simple loop here on the end. Swing it open. Attach that part of my chain. Now I have myself a little closure for my Woodland Fairy Amethyst and Apatite necklace. Pretty quick, huh? Let's make some earrings super quick. I am going to be using this little moon face charm, a head pin, got an ear wire for this, and one of these apatite beads. Move that guy out of the way. And I'm just going to make a link just like I did for the necklace using my 20 gauge wire and that apatite bead. So same process. With the larger loop first, and I'm using that second largest loop on my 6-step bend pliers because it is the smaller one. I just love this box. There's so many charms and focals too. I could just make like nothing but necklaces for the rest of the... Alright, here we go. Or I could do a whole bunch of earrings. So I'm gonna, again, it's the same loop, so it's gonna be perpendicular. And then I'm going to use this smallest loop for this unwrapped loop on this link. And now for my moon face, I'm gonna stick my, what is this thing called? Head pin. I'm gonna put my head pin in. I'm gonna bend it directly right on top of that. And then I'm going to use that same loop to bend around. My little moon face. Snip off my excess. This is going to be a simple loop. It doesn't need to hold the same amount of weight on it. It just needs to hold this moon bead up. So now that I've got a little loop there, then I can get this guy wrapped onto it. I mean, I guess I could swing it open and closed because it is a simple loop, but I want to leave it where it is for now because I've got to wrap this anyway. I may as well hook this on first and then wrap it. then I can put my ear wire on, and I have some earrings to go with my necklace. So this is a super quick video. It's not a super quick make because you do have to make all of those links, but that should give you something very pretty, almost ethereal to wear. I'm really enjoying this bead box. I'll put links in the description to Sam's Bead Shop where you can sign up for the bead box, or you can shop for their extra boxes. Often they will list extras on their shop if there are any other beads available, or you can just get the whole box. Even without being a subscriber, I have done that before. I did that actually before I ever subscribed. I was like, oh, I love that box, and I just bought the Sam's Bead box outright before I started subscribing. But there we go. It's been a little while since I did a really good wrapped loop with the big and little loops necklace like this. Hope you enjoyed this. If you like what you see, hit the like button. If you want to see more, hit subscribe. I'll talk with you later. Happy beading.